Hello again, welcome to today's upload. My name is Stacey, I'm a mess and a dress, and today we are here for my part 1 of my May wrap up. So after reading a ridiculous amount of books in April, I really genuinely thought that I was taking it quite steady in May. I kind of didn't rush to start a new book when I finished one. I didn't cram books in. I just thought I'm just going to take it easy, and I still read 53 books in May. So am I reading these in my sleep? Where I don't think any of these were audiobooks either. I don't even know how I managed to fit that all in. I really don't, but I did. So here we are again. So today we're going to do part 1. We're going to do the first half of the books, and then in my next video we will wrap up the rest of them. And so let's get started. There were some really good ones this month. So first up, and probably my favourite book I've read, possibly this year, but definitely this month, was The Billionaires Wake Up Call Girl by Annika Martin. Now, I'm a bit confused because this is actually, I think, book 2 in the series, and I thought it was the first one, but it wasn't. And it's definitely my first book by Annika Martin. It's the first book I've read. And oh my goodness, this book was so good. Seriously, it was, from the very beginning, it just grabbed me and held my attention for the whole time. I rattled through it. It was such a funny, properly laugh out loud funny book. I could see this being made into a romantic comedy like that. It was so engaging, so entertaining. I absolutely loved it. So basically you have our heroine Lizzie, who is working at a business for a kind of standoffish, reclusive boss. People don't see him a lot. He's very grumpy. He meets her once or twice, and he's really rude and arrogant and horrible. And she is just a lowly administrator. She's kind of minding her own business, and she ends up getting tasked with finding a new wake-up service for him for the morning. And she basically can't find anybody to do it. Everybody hates him, avoids him, because he's such a nightmare and to deal with. So she ends up ringing him herself, and it's 4:30 in the morning. She's still really half asleep and quite tired, and she, before he answers the phone, starts complaining about what kind of idiot would want a wake-up service. Why can't you just set an alarm like another person? You have a phone, why can't you just use it? She uses some slightly more colourful language than that, and he picks up the phone, and instantly she's horrified. She thinks she's going to get fired, she thinks she's going to get caught out, and they enter into this real kind of banter, just really funny conversation. She is just trying not to show how mortified she is. He's just baffled at who would ring and basically insult him down the phone at 4:30 in the morning. She ends up continuing to be his wake-up call for a little while. I was really surprised at how quickly this took a sexual romantic turn. I mean, almost immediately he's basically trying to engage her in very inappropriate conversations for a professional environment. And I don't know, that just kind of added to how funny the whole situation felt. And at every turn this book really surprised me. It didn't go where I was expecting it to. Some of the plot kind of twists and turns that it took just were not what I was expecting. And I really, really liked it. The reveal of her finally being revealed as the wake-up call girl didn't end up the way I wanted, and actually ended up being quite a bit earlier than I expected. This book was just perfect. It was just absolutely hands down my favourite book I read in May, and I really, really, really must read the rest of the series because this could be one of my favourite series of all time. So next up, it felt like everybody and their dog in May was talking about reading Elizabeth Hoyt's Maiden Lane series, and I've never read it. I've never read anything by Elizabeth Hoyt, I don't think. So I decided that I was going to give it a go. And obviously book 1 is Wicked Intentions. This is Temperance, a widow who works in the kind of shadier parts of London, and she goes out and kind of collects stray children who need to be cared for, people who've been orphaned or abandoned or whatever else. And she ends up coming into contact with Lazarus, who is this really deep, dark figure. Everyone's a little bit scared of him. No one really knows kind of what his motivations are and what his kind of thoughts are. He's very cold, very distant, and he has kind of a reputation in the town as being very dark and twisted. She ends up having to help him to solve a murder mystery, and they get drawn into this, and they're in London, and they're in all that kind of the rough areas, and they have to go to taverns and brothels and all the rest of it, and over time they're drawn to each other. You find out a bit about Temperance's history. It's just, oh, this was such a good start to the book. I love a dark, damaged hero, you know me. And Lazarus was ace. He was really, really just intoxicatingly interesting. I just loved kind of seeing him at first be very dismissive of Temperance because she comes across as very kind of uptight and reserved, and then realising there's so much more to her than that, and gradually drawing her out of her shell. It was just, it was a really, really good start to the series, and I have heard that things only get better from here, so I am really excited to pick up the next book in the series. So next we have the third and final book in the Three Misses series by Jess Michaels, and this is The Duke's Wife. And this is a series that I've been reading through NetGalley, like as an ARC copy, and I've read all 3 books in the series now, and this is the final one. And this is a story of Abigail and Nathan, and they're proper enemies to lovers. They loathe each other. They've loathed each other for like the whole series, and it was never really, really clear why, because they didn't seem like they should have any real reason to not like each other. But some of that's kind of explained in this book, and you see a bit more why they've got such negative feelings towards each other. What I really appreciated is that doesn't stop them from being attracted to each other at all, and in fact they act on that attraction really early in the book, and then the main plot lines are all kind of how they deal with the aftermath of that. And I really liked that because it meant that we didn't have to wait too long to see them come together. We got that kind of relationship developing very quickly, and this was such a satisfying ending to the series. It was so nice to see the couples from the previous books. It was so nice to see everything just tie up neatly in a bow and all end happily for everybody involved, and I absolutely loved it. So Jess Michaels is a new kind of must-read author of mine. I need to go and check out her back catalogue, and I also need to keep an eye out for future releases because this was a really impressive series. So my next read of the month was Lord of the Vampires by Gina Showalter, and I really, really want to enjoy Gina Showalter. Like, I love Cresley Cole, and I think I found Gina through either blurbs on the back of Cresley's book, or because it's kind of like, if you like this, then you will like this. And I've not yet read the book by Gina Showalter that has grabbed me the same way that Cresley Cole's Immortals After Dark series do. They're all kind of paranormal romances, very similar in kind of theme, but not in any way in execution. They have a very different vibe to them. And this one was the same. It had such a great premise. Nikolai is a vampire prince who is basically being held as a sex slave by these witches, and he is rescued by Jane, who is a human, who is mystically called to him through time and space to come and rescue him. And it was such an interesting premise, and just something just didn't hit right for me, and I literally couldn't tell you what it is, because it's one of those books that on paper everything should have worked for me, and yet I just didn't feel it. I really, really enjoyed parts of it. There were some great moments, and there were other bits that just really just were a big miss. I think the ending really didn't help, because the ending was very much a MacGuffin style. All of the problems we've introduced, we're going to overcome them in a really wishy-washy sort of way, that it doesn't really feel earned, and it doesn't feel like it was deserved victory for the two. It just felt like we're just going to brush all of those problems under the carpet and pretend they don't exist. I don't know what it is. Like I said, I really, really, really want to like these books, and it was really middle of the road for me. So that was a bit disappointing because I had such high hopes. So next up we have another NetGalley ARC, and this was Bound by Samantha Wilde, and I really enjoyed this one. I didn't really know what to expect. It was another one of these kind of wishy-washy blurbs, introductions. I'm not giving an awful lot away, but the opening scene is so just gripping. Lexi is an investigative journalist, and she has a encounter with Nash, who is the enforcer for a crime organisation, and he thinks they're there for a little bit of hanky-panky, but in actual fact she's there to drug him and steal from him because she's trying to investigate the criminal organisation he's part of and uncover the fact that they've murdered her family and stuff. And this is all in the first chapter, the first few pages, all this is happening. And it ends up with her running off, she's stolen from him, and he's going to go chase her down. And so I was expecting quite a dark captor-captive vibe, and I didn't really get that. Nash is, I keep calling him Nate, and his name's not Nate, his name's Nash. It's Nash. He wasn't as kind of dark a hero as I thought he was going to be. He's still very alpha. He's still very dominant over her, but he does listen to her. He listens to all of her kind of complaints and her queries, and he kind of takes it on board, and he in the end ends up helping her. And it's very much his story about him picking sides over whose side is he on, his kind of organisations, including some people who are almost like family to him, or this woman that he's slowly being drawn to and, you know, he can't help being attracted to. And I really liked the whole vibe. I thought there were plenty of twists and turns, there was lots of action, it was a very gripping storyline. I was really pleased with how it all ended at the end, and yeah, I was really, really impressed. This was a great little read. So then, it felt like everybody's talking about this series as well, so I thought I would give the first one a try, and this was Filthy by Serena Ackroyd. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah, who knows. And this is a mob mafia style romance, and this one is Finn and Aoife, and Finn is trying to buy out Aoife's tea shop, if I remember rightly, and he basically blackmails her into entering a relationship with him, which I'm all here for a mafia blackmail relationship. That works for me. It's fine. But was it me, or was this book really, really, really long? Like, every time they hit what I thought was their big climactic moment, it then moved to another bit, and it just kept going and going and going. And I couldn't figure out if it was genuinely a long book or if I wasn't engaging with it and that's why it felt long to me. I enjoyed the characters in principle, I enjoyed the romance in principle, but I kind of wanted it to be wrapped up quicker. I wanted them to get where they were going quicker. It felt very, very drawn out, and I think quite a lot of it could have been edited out and I probably wouldn't have missed it. I have seen some people saying that, you know, this is almost like a setup for the rest of the series, so maybe I need to give book 2 again a go. I have it on my Kindle, so I should just jump in there. But I think because I didn't love book 1, I'm kind of putting it off. We'll get there one day. I've got like 141 books on my Kindle to read. I'll get to them all eventually, hopefully before I die. So next up, I was so looking forward to this one. I read my first ever Katie Roberts book, and this was Desperate Measures, and this is book 1 in her kind of Disney villain retelling series that I've heard so much about and I'm so intrigued by. I love a fairy tale retelling at the best of times, and a villain one is even better. There is that book series, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's non-adult romantic, it's like YA fantasy, and they're all kind of the villain retellings, but they're all a bit meh. This was not meh, this was fantastic. This is Jasmine and Jafar, and I really liked the modernisation, the way they kind of brought those characters into the modern day, the way they interpreted some of the relationships. The character of Ali, or Aladdin, for example, was really interesting. I loved all the stuff in the underworld with Meg and with Hades, and that got me super excited for book 2 because, man, I mean, these are dark and they're sexy and they're filthy and I love them. And, you know, not probably for the faint-hearted. Jafar is definitely a dominant alpha anti-hero, and he is... It's that interesting line for me of the consensual non-consent, if that makes sense, where the girl kind of wants it to be her against her will because then she doesn't have to take ownership of it and she can blame someone else even though secretly it's what she wants. And I like that little grey area. It's one of my favourite places to be. So from a fictional point of view, that works for me so well. And yeah, I loved this book. It was gorgeous, so satisfying. I also loved the ending. I mean, the ending from a feminist standpoint was just, I just loved it. So I am super excited to read the rest of the series, and they are now all on my TBR, all of them, along with Neon Gods, which has also just been released, which is Hades and Persephone, which I'm just like mind blown. I can't wait. So the next book that I found, and I have no idea where I found it from, just scrolling through people's Instagrams, was Man Down. I don't know who wrote this book. Who wrote Man Down? Kate Meader, apparently. And apparently this is book 3 in the Rookie Rebel series, and I've not read any of the series, so clearly you do not need to read these in any particular order, because I certainly didn't. This was a really emotional read. It's a widower romance, so our hero has lost his wife and children in a car accident, and oh my goodness, I don't have history of traumatic experiences like this, and I found these flashback scenes so difficult to read. They really just, I think any parent losing a child is a horrible thing to imagine, and vividly imagining it is worse, and watching it and seeing it happen in front of you is just like the worst possible thing you can think of. So all of the flashback scenes with him and what happened to his family just gutted me. It really did. It was so, I think almost that overshadowed the romance for me, because his past was so brutal that almost the romance took a back seat to it. And that's probably why I didn't engage with the romance quite as much as I possibly could have if it wasn't so shell-shocked from his history. He basically, the story starts when he is texting his wife's phone, just getting his feelings out there. And what he doesn't realise is the phone company have given that number to a new person. And that person happens to be our heroine, Sadie. Sadie's her name. Sadie and Gunnar. And Sadie replies, and they get into a bit of a back and forth conversation. And I really like these You've Got Mail style stories where a couple are interacting kind of virtually, so by email or by letter or by phone or whatever, and then they meet in real life and they don't realise that the two are the same, and so they're kind of having two very different relationships, this very close personal one and this more friction-filled one in real life, because they don't, and then obviously you have to then have them all find out, and it's all the real and it's all the drama. And I love those kind of stories, and this delivers that so well. And I also think it gives a really interesting viewpoint on grief and relationships after grief and all the rest of it. It was a really lovely book. It was really emotional, and like I said, I think that possibly meant that I remember, when I think about this book, I remember his history more than I remember their romance. But I think this is because it really struck a chord with me, and that's no detriment to the romance itself. And I would definitely go back and reread the rest of the series just to see how it all kind of fits in. So next up, I read the Hades trilogy by C.N. Crawford, which is Fallen, Rapture and Possessed. And do not let the name befool you. I don't personally feel this is a Hades and Persephone retelling. I think you possibly meant to think that. I think they're kind of hinting at it, but personally for me, there was nothing Hades or Persephone in this. You have a heroine who goes to a castle. Why does she have to go to the castle? There's a reason. There's a reason why she has to go there. I don't remember why. And there's a dark count who lives in this castle, and he is shown to be very brutal. He kind of openly executes anybody who stands up and rebels against him, and she goes with the intention of investigating what's happened to her sister, who also went to the castle. And there's no real way of explaining the plot without telling you the whole plot, and it is quite convoluted. It's an angels and demons style romance, and the angels are not your fluffy white halo wearing angels. They are like, you know, flaming swords and brutal and vindictive and venge filled. And I really, really enjoyed it. I really did. I loved her characterization. The heroine, Lila, has a really interesting backstory, and a lot is uncovered as you go through the book. I think it is a romance. There is definitely a romance between the two main characters, but it's almost second fiddle to the fantasy element, which so often happens, doesn't it, in fantasy romance books? You kind of either have more romance or more fantasy. It's a delicate balance, and this definitely felt more like a really interesting fantasy storyline that also had a romantic element. I'm not mad about it, I'm just saying. For me personally, I would have liked a little more of the romance and a little less of the fantasy, but each to their own. It was a very interesting series. I'm glad I read it. What can I say? So next up, I got stuck into a new Mafia series, and this is Sophie Lark, and it first was Ivan and then was Snow. And again, don't know why I found these books. Do you ever have that where you just suddenly start reading a book and you can't remember who recommended it to you, or what? I probably saw it on someone's Instagram stories, let's be honest. Ivan is a mafia romance, and I love this one because the heroine is a hitman who is sent to kill Ivan, and he catches her and he holds her captive. And I like this when you have two strong, like, I love a captive situation where one of the people is in a like weaker position and one is in a stronger position, but it's even more fun sometimes when both of the characters are strong and she is giving nothing. She's just like, absolutely giving him a run for his money at every opportunity. I really enjoyed the dynamic between these two. It was really, really hot and sexy. Almost from the beginning, he is instantly kind of, you know, attracted to her. And I think he really appreciates the fact that she's a strong woman who can stand up against him. I think he really likes that part. I think that's one of the things that kind of draws her to him. So I really enjoyed that element. And then when they actually eventually move on to the same side and they're working together, oh, that is just perfection. It's just brilliant. I loved it. Such a good book. And then I immediately went on to Snow. And Snow is he a cage fighter? He's a fighter of some description. I think it's something to boxing, but it's really like underground, brutal boxing where people die occasionally and get beaten bloody and all the rest of it. And while Snow is fighting, he meets Sasha, who has been blackmailed into working as a doctor for this kind of mob mafia boss because her family owe him a big debt, and she is working in this underground fighting ring, basically stitching everybody back together. And bless her, she gets a rough deal from these mob bosses. Not from Snow. Snow's lovely, but the mob guys are horrible to her, and they make her do some horrible things. Like, I think at one point she has to hack somebody to pieces. Like, she has to dismember a corpse and hide it. Grim. My only real criticism with this book was it takes a really, really, really long time for Snow and Sasha to meet. Like, a really long time. I'm pretty sure it was something like 50-60%. It took ages. And because of that, the romance element of them seems really rushed. Like, it feels almost novella length, because by the time they've actually met, you get an awful lot of his backstory and an awful lot of setup for him, and you get an awful lot of her backstory and setup for her, and that takes a really long time before they actually are even in the same room together, and even longer before they're in the same room in a romantic sense. So for me, I needed a little less of the setup. I feel like I could have got some of the setup from conversations between them later. I really wanted them to be in the same room together quicker, because once they were... So a couple of really easy, breezy, not too challenging books that I read were The Kings of Brighton, book 1 and book 2, which is Tobias and Logan, and these are by Megyn Ward, and these are really just easy, I don't know the word for easy. You know what I mean? You know, when a book it's not taxing at all, it takes no mental concentration, you just pick it up, you read it, and you're done. And you've not had to kind of work at any point during it. That's how these felt. They just had a story to tell, they told it, and everyone's happy at the end. Lovely. Tobias is a second chance. It says low-key secret baby romance, and I don't know why it says that, because it's literally a secret baby romance. That is it. I don't really get why on Goodreads that's kind of like in the blurb. Hush hush, it's like, I don't get it. It's literally, that's the plot. They have a one night stand, she gets pregnant. So I'm really sorry if that's a massive spoiler for anybody, but that's literally the whole book. I don't really get why that's treated as if you don't know that before. It's quite obvious from the beginning that's where we're gonna end up. And then book 2 is Logan, and Logan is so all the men are connected by they were all kind of in foster care together, or in kind of like, you know, boys' homes together, and they formed a little family of their own. And Tobias and Logan, so they're kind of like brothers by experience more than by blood. And Logan, it turns out, is actually the son of a famous serial killer, and so he very much feels like his life has been affected by what his dad did, and people look at him differently because of what his dad did. And so he very much feels like he has to be very careful about his interactions with women and with people in general, because people will always misinterpret his behaviour. And so he hides who he really is, and he has a fake name. And if anybody kind of gets close to the truth, then he legs it and disappears and goes to move somewhere different. He meets Jane, who it turns out Jane's mother worked with him when he was younger to kind of help him in his home situation. And Jane sort of knew about this boy from her mum's work. So they never met, but she's very aware of who he is and what he's been through. And they meet and they connect. And the plot goes from there. Again, it was a really, really easy read. I thought we were heading for like this big dramatic climactic finale, and that's possibly because I've been reading a lot of romantic suspense recently, and this was not that at all. It didn't go down that route at all, so it really took me by surprise. And so it was kind of just really pleasant and just more emotional than action driven, which is fine. It's fine. I don't think these were groundbreaking. They didn't do anything new or excite me particularly, but I did enjoy them, and I will eventually pick up the rest of the series. So the next book I read was Improper by Darcy Burke, and this is another arc from NetGalley. I've downloaded so many arcs recently, and I still have like a ton to read and review, so sorry NetGalley. I do, but sometimes just I can't find the words. You know how it is? I can't find the words. But anyway, Improper. I really want to like Darcy Burke's writing. Like, this is the second book now I've read, it's the second arc, and if I'm honest, I don't think I'm going to request any more from her because I feel guilty, because I don't enjoy them as much as I want to, and on paper I can't understand why, because they all seem perfectly good historical romance plots. This is a kind of rakish gentleman Tobias and his unwilling ward Fiona, and I really liked their dynamic. I really liked the way she gives him a run for his money, and she's constantly testing boundaries and pushing against all the kind of society confinements and really just trying to like not follow the rules at all times. He is a member of the Phoenix Club, which is a club that women are allowed to go to, although only married women or long-term spinsters or widows, not unmarried young ladies, obviously. And I really liked that element of it, but just something about this book just didn't do anything for me. I found it a bit boring. I didn't really care about any of the characters. It didn't help, I don't think. So Tobias has to marry for some reason in a will, and if he doesn't marry, then Fiona will get like the property that he should inherit. And they spend far too long courting other people. So he's like trying to find a wife, and she is trying to find a husband, and for a long time that's not each other. They're like, it felt like for the vast majority of this book they weren't romantically interested in each other at all, and I think that's why it just didn't really do anything for me. I wanted to feel more kind of unspoken passion or attraction between them. When he suddenly decides he is attracted to her, he decides it like that, and we go from 0 to 60 really, really quickly. But I wanted more much earlier, and I think, so like I said, I don't think I'm going to be requesting any more books by this author, just because they're all falling a little bit flat for me. They're never quite hitting that sweet spot, and I would rather leave it for somebody else who maybe really is enjoying them. So it's a shame, because like I said, I can't figure out what it is I'm not connecting with, but it's probably just a personal thing. We just don't connect. Sorry. So then I read my first ever book by Sierra Simone. Is it Simone or Simone? Someone tell me. Do you pronounce the E? I don't know. This was Priest, and it kind of does what it says on the tin. So I think Sierra is well known for writing very sexy, taboo-ish romances, and Priest is definitely that. It is definitely dark, taboo, raunchy, all of those things. It is about a priest who has some very unpriestly thoughts about one of his parishioners, and because of various things going on in the background of his church, these are even more inappropriate than they would be with any other priest. It's like he's more horrified by these urges than he would be if he was just a normal priest. I don't like forbidden romances. So why did you pick this book, Stacey? Why did you pick it? Because I'm interested. I like to have my comfort zones pushed sometimes. I like to be forced to step out of what's comfortable. I don't like forbidden romances because... how do I explain it? Generally speaking, if you are romantically interested in somebody and you think you need to hide it, then on some level you must think you are wrong. You must think that what you feel is wrong. And I get that's the whole point of it to be a romance, I really do. But for me personally, if you think it's wrong, you shouldn't be doing it. End of. If you think that there is a reason why this is wrong and bad, and you're ashamed of it and you feel you have to cover it up, then you shouldn't be doing it. That's my personal opinion. And so that's why taboo romances don't work for me, because I don't like covering things up. I don't like secrets. I don't like people, you know, trying to hide relationships. It makes me feel cringy and uncomfortable. And this whole book is them hiding their relationship. And what I really didn't like about this book, which, I enjoyed the book, right? It's a good book. It really is. It's really steamy. The characters are really interesting. but the heroine really hacked me off because she's in that really privileged position in this book where she has nothing to lose. Like, nothing. She works in a strip joint. She is a free agent. She can have sex with whoever she wants. And she has nothing to lose. So when she goes out of her way to seduce a priest, a man who has everything to lose, his reputation, his job, his livelihood, you know, possibly friends and family, it annoys me. And then the final conflict annoyed me even more because from her perspective, she just kind of goes, buries her head in the sand and doesn't want to have to deal with it. But he has to deal with it because it's his entire life crashing around his heels. So, although overall I think this book is a very, very, very good book, if you like taboo romance, you're probably going to love it. It is so sexy and steamy and naughty. I mean, it's completely sacrilegious. It's like blasphemous in places. Really, genuinely it is. They use anointing oil for purposes you don't want to know about. Like, seriously, this is filth. And it's brilliant. And if you're into that stuff, then you go for it, guys, because you're going to love it. For me, it was just a bit, I just wanted to shake them and go, either quit your job so you can be together, or don't be sneaking around behind your entire parish's back to sleep with her. One or the other, guys. One or the other. End of rant. Coming up to the end, I read another arc. Like I said, so many arcs. So many. This was Reawakened by Rachel Stewart. This is an older heroine, younger hero romance, which is absolutely not my cup of tea, which is why it's really funny that I picked this one up. But like I said, you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone occasionally, don't you? You have to try something a bit different. And on this case, I'm really, really glad I did. I mean, I'm going to be honest, the reason I don't like older female, younger male stories is because I am completely in denial about the fact that I am no longer the blushing ingenue, just left college, meeting a more experienced male, and I'm definitely more into cougar territory if we go by my age, and I'm completely not prepared to accept that. Like, no. So I do not want to identify with these young, older women who fancy younger guys. No. I'm still 21 in my head, and I could totally, you know, date a man who's 20 years older than me. I'm not the older one in this relationship. So I'll be honest, this is why I don't like them. Generally speaking, it's vanity. I'm not kidding anybody, believe me, I know. But this one was really, really good. Reawakened is the story of Olivia and Valentine. And Valentine's basically hired by this elite escort organisation, which very specifically link up people with escorts, long-term escorts, like relationships, with all suits and needs and preferences, sometimes more so than you realise you need. And he's linked up with Olivia, who is a... Is it that one? No, that's a different book. That was literally just describing a book and realised it was a different book. It was a completely different book. That's not this book, folks. This is this book. So basically, in this book, Olivia is a widow who lived in a very kind of controlled, reserved relationship with her husband. She runs charities and has a very kind of public persona. And since the death of her husband, she has gone off the rails, all the way off them. And she is living the wild life. She's driving fast cars, she's drinking, she's having sex, she's having a ball. Why you shouldn't be allowed to do this as an older woman, I don't know. But her board, who run her charities, are trying to, like, nail her down and rehabilitate her image. And they hire Valentine, who is a PR assistant. And they have a first meeting, unbeknown to her, at a sex club that she's gone to experience new things and to kind of broaden her horizons and try and experiment with things that maybe she wouldn't have done with her husband. And this makes for a very awkward working relationship at first. And I really enjoyed the fact that the relationship dynamic, it wasn't solely about the fact that she's older and he's younger. It was very much about her trying to tempt him to walk on the wild side with her, him trying to help control her. It was a very steamy, very enjoyable romance. I really liked it. Like I said, the age gap dynamic wasn't too strong of a plot point, which I think is why I probably liked it. It didn't focus too heavily on the fact that she's older. It was more about experiences and about their characters and about the reasons why sometimes you're pushing boundaries. Like, are you pushing boundaries for the right reasons or are you pushing them for the wrong reasons? Like, if you want to do something because you want to do it, that's great. But if you're trying to make a spectacle to make a point, possibly not so great. This was really, really steamy and I loved it. It's part of the Mills and Boon Dare series, which I think has now actually ended, which is such a shame because, you know, who doesn't want a bit of steam now and again? So I really, really liked this, and like I said, I am glad that I stepped out of my comfort zone just a little bit and gave it a try, because it was well worth it. And last but not least, I read a few books by Christy Caldwell, who I would like to go on record as saying is one of my most underrated authors, historical romance authors. I don't hear people talking about her. Guys, talk about Christy Caldwell. She's ace. If you like Julia Quinn, if you like Eloisa James, if you like Lisa Kleypas, you will like Christy Caldwell. She's fab. She really is. So first up, I read the newest book in her Wantons series, and this was The Importance of Being Wanton, and this was the story of Emma and Charles, and they've been betrothed since they were kids and been expected to get married, and suddenly 17 years later Emma has got involved with this society who are all about women reclaiming their independence and not following rules and not marrying for the sake of it, and she calls off the wedding. And Charles is horrified because he feels like he should be grateful to be free from the obligation and responsibility, but something kind of snaps in him and he realises that maybe he never really gave her a chance. Actually, he quite likes her, and he actually was quite okay with the idea of being married to her just at a future point. Now, if you can get over the fact that he shows no romantic interest in her at all until the moment she tells him she doesn't want him, which, guys, seriously, you always want what you can't have, don't you? If you can get past that minor plot point at the beginning, the rest of the book is brilliant. Like, I absolutely loved it. I loved watching Charles try to come up with ways to entice Emma and find ways to kind of win her back over to his side. Emma has always secretly been in love with Charles. She secretly adores him, and one of the reasons that she doesn't want to get married to him is because she knows he doesn't feel the same way. I loved the relationship. He starts a separate society to kind of compete with hers, to kind of show different viewpoints to everything, and they have a lot of competition, a lot of banter, a lot of tension between each other. I absolutely loved it. Christy Caldwell can do no wrong, really. Her books are just so easy and engaging to read. They just are just blissful. I absolutely love them, and this one was no different. This series is really, really just spot on for me. And because I enjoyed reading this book so much, I decided to start a reread of Christy Caldwell's The Heart of a Duke series, which is like, I think it's like 16 books or something like that, and they all kind of interconnect. And I'm not going to talk too much about them right now because I am doing a reading vlog where I'm going through all of the books. I've only got to like book 3 so far, I think, because I keep getting distracted. But basically, I then read For the Love of the Duke and More Than a Duke, which are the first 2 books in the series. And seriously, if you haven't read this series, I love this series so much. This will be like my 4th reread of the whole series. And like I said, there are 16 books. That's quite a time commitment to reread these books 4 times. But I do, because they are so enjoyable. They're so easy to read. They're all ever so slightly different. Every heroine is slightly different. Every hero is slightly different. Every scenario is slightly different. I love it. So I finished off the book month by starting this reread. And as I said, I will be putting up a reading vlog, probably in 2 parts, because a reading vlog for all 16 books will be huge. But that is in the works at the moment. And that was how I finished off the month. And I loved it. So that's into part 1 of the May wrap up. We have still got like 20 something books left to go, including 3 series that I've really got hooked on, and that will be in my next video. So hopefully you will stick around for that. If you don't already, please subscribe so you'll know when it comes out, and I will see you very soon. Bye.